Hi, here we are in Ponta Delgada with a beautiful background of the city and the Atlantic Ocean to do a very special interview to Craig Mello, the Nobel Prize in Medicine 2006. Craig, welcome here to the Azores. My first question is, who's Craig Mello?
Well, it's wonderful to be here, and thank you for having me in this wonderful little island, and it feels like family to be back always when I come here. I think of life as a journey, one that we share with each other and our loved ones, but also one that's full of surprises, sometimes very difficult times, and of course many times very wonderful times. I think of myself kind of like the explorers who found these islands, still searching for new lands and new adventures. That's my life.
What was the feeling when you came here for the first time?
It was wonderful to come here, especially to see the town of Maya, where my great-grandparents emigrated from, and to finally see the black cliffs that my great-grandfather used to talk about, where he would jump in and dive in. So it was wonderful, and I always feel like I'm coming home, especially with the warmth of the family that's here, and it's just wonderful to come back and see our cousins.
And where were you born?
I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, but I didn't live there very long. That was when my father was getting his PhD in paleontology at Yale. And then I grew up in Fairfax City near Washington, D.C., and spent all of my high school training in public schools. And I'm a very big believer and supporter of education. I feel like all children deserve to have a chance and should be given a chance at a good education.
So your father was a PhD professional. This is amazing. How it happened? It was like a family dream, because we are talking about a generation where so few people had a PhD in the Portuguese community at those times. How it happened?
Well, my grandfather told a story about when my dad was born. My grandparents, neither of them had been able to go to even finish high school. You know, they had to leave high school and get paychecks for the family when they were little. And when my dad was born, my grandfather told him in the crib, he said, "You're going to college."
And he was the first one to go to college?
He was the first one in the family to go to college.
What about your mom? Because your mom also has a university degree, right?
That's right. My mom is an artist, and she met my father at Brown University, and they both were from families where no one had ever gone to college. So my mom was the first in her family to go to college as well. And she's also from an island, from Scotland. So I guess I have a lot of seafaring ancestry.
You are in the middle of the ocean all lifelong. Huh?
Yes, exactly.
Craig, I know that your grandfather was a special man. Can you tell us how important he was in your life?
Yes. My grandfather, Frank Mello, was a very smart man, and he was a great role model for any child, and all of my grandparents were, for that matter, but Frank Mello was also very, very smart. He would always read books, and he would give us quizzes in math and things. He was a very clever guy, but he never got the chance at an education. So it just made me appreciate my opportunity to see this very smart man driving a truck and doing hard work his whole life, but still enjoying his life. You know,
but
setting
he was
that example.
A firefighter too.
Fireman, yeah, he was.
Fireman.
He was a firefighter, volunteer firefighter. But you know, he knew everybody in his town. He was a great guy. He was also a great athlete. They called him Bullet Mello because he was so fast on the on the football field. So,
The Azorean family was in Rhode Island, and you also studied at Brown University. Brown was really important for you to go back to Rhode Island and have all these presence of your father's side family. It was a good experience to going back to Brown, where your parents studied, and going back to the family, to the Azorean family.
yes, my Azorian family settled in Warren, Rhode Island, which is a beautiful little town right next to the coast. I don't think they wanted to get too far away from the Atlantic Ocean, so they stayed near the beautiful Narragansett Bay, it's called. When I was a kid, I fell in love with the ocean. I lived in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., very hot, no ocean, nothing blue anywhere, just, the city. So when I got a chance to go to Brown University and be so close to the beautiful bay and the ocean that I loved, maybe I always wanted to come back here. I don't know. There's so much beauty around here. You guys need to appreciate this wonderful place you live. But I loved it there, and I had a great education at Brown.
How was your academic journey since elementary school? How did you get to postdoctoral programs and hold the journey?
I think my life and my education is a good example for the kids who are not interested in school, who are always want to be out playing or searching in the streams or rivers or playing in the ocean. That's how I was. When I was a child, I didn't take school seriously until about 7th grade. But I was very fortunate to have parents who were educated, and we had great conversations around the dinner table. So even when my grades were not so good in elementary school, I knew I was smart. I just wasn't motivated by what they were teaching. So I think for kids who are not doing well in school, we need to give them a chance, because when that child finally sees something interesting and decides they really want to learn, they deserve a chance. That's what happened for me when I got to 7th grade, 8th grade, middle school. I started to learn about, finally there were science courses, and I loved science. I always loved science, even when I was little, but they never teach it in school until later. So but that's when I fell in love with learning, was really in 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, and then after that, you couldn't keep me away from the science courses, and I loved it. So
high school was really motivating for you. And when you finished high school, you were sure that you wanted to go to the university?
Yes, I always knew I wanted to go to university. I knew that was very important. My family valued it a lot, especially since my grandparents never got that chance. We all knew that it was a privilege. It was a real opportunity to be able to go to college. So I never doubted that. And it was only a matter, when we talked about college, my family always talked about we all knew we would go to college, but as far as what we would work on, no pressure. Just choose whatever you think is most interesting. That's what my parents would tell me. Choose, the most interesting subjects that you like and pursue that, and you'll probably be good at it. So you'll succeed.
And your parents had this idea that education is very good, but success and happiness is also good in life.
And in my family, we feel very strongly that they come together. If you work hard, a lot of times, like getting an education, you have to work hard. Sometimes you have to do coursework that you don't like, but it's worth it. And it really is, because the happiness, the satisfaction that comes from doing a good job, even if it's hard work, is very important. And I say that not just for academics, but also for your career as well. A lot of times
After the bachelor's degree at Brown University, what was the next step?
Well, for me, I went to grad school and in two steps. The first step, I went to University of Colorado, which had a very good biology program. That's where I fell in love with the animal that I work on, C. elegans. It's a little worm. And then after Colorado, I had to transfer for academic reasons. I decided to move my final part of my education to Harvard, where I finished my degree.
The
And
doctoral program?
degree. And so that my degree was again in studying. What I was working on was trying to put genetic information back into an organism, into an animal. So genetic information, DNA, you can study it in the laboratory, but ultimately, in order to really understand it, you have to be able to put the genetic information back into the organism to find out if you really understand it. If it works properly after you've changed it, you can put it back into the animal and study how that works. Now, that was what I worked on, and that led to, in part, to the discoveries that became the Nobel Prize in 2006, because we were learning about how organisms handle information.
But the work that you have done in Seattle, Washington, state of Washington, was also very important to get the Nobel Prize in medicine, right?
It was, but it was different. We were studying in Seattle. I was studying genetics of the organism. Not in my PhD, I was studying how to take information and essentially put it back into the organism. And then during my postdoctoral training, I was studying the genetics of development. So I was studying how the information in the egg is able to program the development of the animal. How do you get neurons in gut and muscle? And of course, this is in this tiny, tiny little worm, but the cells that make up this animal are very similar to ours. They have muscles just like ours, and nerves just like ours, and gut just like ours. It's amazing how similar we are to this tiny microscopic little animal. So I studied that for 4 years, and that was very important because I learned the genetics, and I learned some really important aspects of the biology that were helpful later on.
And why did you go to UMass Worcester? What was the context that brought you there?
Well, when I applied for a faculty position to start my own laboratory, I knew I wanted to be close to my family who lived in New England. So I applied to a lot of schools near there, and UMass was fairly new. I wasn't sure about it, but when I went and visited it, it was such a wonderful school, and great colleagues, and very, very exciting place to be, because there was a lot of investment, and they were growing constantly, adding new faculty. So I came there in 1994, and I started my lab, and I haven't left since. So now going on, almost 25 years now. So.
And the university is very happy for having you there, huh?
Yes.
A Nobel Prize winner as a faculty. This is something for the university.
And the university, the medical school part of the university was only about 35 years old. So it didn't have a long time to get to where it is now. It's one of the best. If it wasn't in Massachusetts, it would be the best in the state. Of course, Massachusetts has MIT and Harvard, but
it's hard to compete.
It's hard to compete, but nevertheless, we are number 2 in our research funding in our state. So we have more biomedical research funding than MIT. We have the second only to Harvard. In the United States, we're in the top, maybe top 30 or 40 in terms of our funding, because it's a really good place. It's actually turned out to be wonderful, and it's been great to be part of that. One of the things that's exciting about UMass is that we are very at the forefront of developing drugs that are based on information. And that's a very exciting type of medicine. It's smart medicine.